You are listening to the Ponchatoula Podcast with your host, Parker Larison. We bring you local news and community interviews from the Ponchatoula Hammond area. Located at the crossroads of I-12 and I-55, deep in the bayous of South Louisiana. Parker is a husband, father, personal injury attorney, author, and community volunteer who is on a mission to share the unique food, culture, events, and people of Ponchatoula with the world. And here's your host, Parker Larison.
Where is the busiest stop sign in Ponchatoula? Take a minute, give that a little thought. Well, I'm not exactly sure. I don't have a traffic study, but I think it's got to be the four-way stop at the corner of East Hickory Street and North 5th Street. You probably know that as the corner where the old post office was located, so it's right south of the new post office, but it's the corner where Dr. Benson's got his dermatology clinic and Mike Fulmer's got his Berryland campers and car overflow lot. And there's the CrossFit on one corner. And then the fourth business on that corner is my law office. I think it's probably the busiest because all the really busy streets like Highway 22, which is Pine Street, and Highway 51, which is Veterans, they have stoplights, red lights. They don't have that many stop signs, or at least four-way stops. But I was thinking about that because I'm looking out the window here in my office, and I'm looking at the beautiful oak trees here, right there at the corner. And if you've driven around Ponchatoula or spent any time here, you know that we are blessed with some beautiful, giant, majestic oak trees. I mean, within a half block of where I am, and certainly visible from my window right here, is, not one, but two gorgeous, gorgeous giant oaks. One of them, I think, is registered. They're hundreds of years old. But, standing among these giant oaks is another beautiful tree, but a much smaller, much younger tree. And it's near the corner. It's on 5th Street, right on the corner of my property. And that tree's about 15 years old. And it's really, really special to me, even though it's the smallest oak tree in the neighborhood by far. And even though it's not as tall or wide or doesn't provide as much shade. But the reason I love it is, quite frankly, my mama planted it. Now, the neat thing about that is, though, Mom planted that tree at least 10, probably a dozen years before I bought this property. She did that, over a decade ago when she was the president of the Ponchatoula Rotary Club. She was the first ever female president. As you may know, that club was for many, many years a men's only institution. So she was kind of a trailblazer. But I love it because it just kind of shows you that, there's a great old saying about the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time's now. And there are other great quotes about that. And, the thing I love about oak trees are the person planting them is probably never going to benefit by sitting in their shade. It's just the nature of a live oak. To get to its full maturity and majesty, it takes many people's lives. And Ponchatoula is a city where people plant trees that they'll probably never get to enjoy the shade from. And they do it because it's the right thing and because it's a community thing. And as that little tree demonstrates, they do it in other people's yards. My mom decided as Rotary president that she knew there were a lot of the old, beautiful trees in town were dying or maybe sometimes getting taken down for development or whatever. And she said, look, we need to think forward and add some trees. So she went all over the city and asked people, hey, can we, the Rotary, plant a tree in your yard? And, this was one of them. And back then there was a much bigger oak tree right down, the yard on the same property. And since then, that tree unfortunately died and needed to be taken down. So thank God Mom did that. That yard would be barren with no trees on that side, but it's not. So I use that as just an example of kind of the Ponchatoula way. And it's neat. And nobody's doing that more in Ponchatoula these days than Mary Beth Crovetto. Mary Beth Crovetto is newly the principal at Ponchatoula Junior High. She just got that job and started maybe within the last month, but certainly within the last few months. And this is her first semester and it's early. And I'm very excited for her. It's a great opportunity. For a long time, she was the vice principal or assistant principal, as they may call it, at Ponchatoula High School. And that's where I met Mary Beth. a little over 20 years ago when I was in school there, she was my teacher. And she was incredible. She was full of energy, and she was just, compassionate, and she just cared. She sponsored the she sponsored the cheerleaders. She was just awesome. So we loved her. She was definitely a student's favorite kind of teacher. And then I got to know her more over the years through her family. Her son, Greg, worked for me here at my law firm for about 4 years, and he's incredible. Greg's getting married in a few weeks, and I can't say enough good things about Greg Crovetto. He's brilliant and funny and smart and just, a good guy, like his daddy and like his mom and like his sisters. And so I was really, really excited when Mary Beth agreed to come on the podcast. I think that you are going to really enjoy this interview. She digs deep, Everybody in Ponchatoula knows Mary Beth, because if you had a kid, we're a one high school town, right? So sure, there are a few kids that a few parents that send their kids to private schools or, Catholic schools out of town. But by and large, most people are sending their kids through the Ponchatoula school system. And Ponchatoula High is the only high school. And you can't get within 1,000 miles of Ponchatoula High School without noticing Mary Beth Crovetto, because she is just everywhere all the time, working her butt off. And she's just wonderful. So, getting her on the podcast was a big score for me. But I love this interview because she really is going to dig deep and tell you things about her personal history that you just probably can't get anywhere else. And it's just really neat. I always knew her faith was very important to her. Many days when my family's unable to go to Mass at St. Joe, which is my church, or go to services at Mount Calvary Baptist in Independence, which is my wife's church, when we're stuck at home, if somebody's sick or something, we'll watch the First Baptist, service online. And Mary Beth's very involved in the church and in the choir, so it's always neat to see her. And I've always, because I knew her personally, I knew her family and her son, I knew that her faith was important, but I didn't really realize how important it was until she shared that with us here in this podcast. So hearing about that, hearing about her ministry with young couples that are having trouble conceiving babies, it's just powerful. Hearing about where that all came from, and the way that her mother raised her is so powerful. Learning more about her husband, Kevin, who's a hero of mine and a dear friend of my brother's, it's a great interview. You're going to see kind of the best of what Ponchatoula has to offer. Personally, I love Mary Beth's story because she is, a move from Hammond to Ponchatoula story. Her father was the longtime principal at Hammond High and on the school board. And of course, she grew up a pure purple-blooded tornado. But she, decided to move down here to greener pastures, so to speak, with the Green Wave. And that tickles my heart. So I think you're going to really enjoy what she's got to say. She is a wonderful person. And with no further ado, here is Mary Beth Crovetto on the Ponchatoula Podcast. Thank you. Welcome back to the Ponchatoula Podcast. I'm your host, Parker Larison, and I have a very special guest with me here today, one of my favorite teachers ever in my life, and just one of my heroes in general, and a dear family friend. It's Mary Beth Crovetto. Mary Beth is the principal of Ponchatoula Junior High. And Mary Beth, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're into?
Well, I am Mary Beth Crovetto, originally from Hammond, but a 30-year resident of Ponchatoula. And what am I into? Raising kids, teaching kids, just enjoying life in Ponchatoula.
Well, we're going to ask about your kids later because they're some of my favorite people. And as you know, I worked with your son, Greg, for years.
Lucky you.
But yeah, tell me about it. Before we get into those adventures, you could live anywhere in the world. You're not from Ponchatoula. You grew up here nearby, but you could live anywhere in the world. Why did you and Kevin decide to settle here?
It's true. We could have moved anywhere. We were young, and when we got married, we had just graduated college, and we did look at a number of options, and our hearts just kept coming back to Ponchatoula. It was a very small town at the time, had a great school system with a wonderful reputation, and as teachers, we decided this is where we wanted to live, work, and place our children in school.
Okay.
That was our motivating factor.
And you both taught at Ponchatoula High School for a while together.
20 years together.
Oh, wow. That's neat.
Yes. He was an industrial arts technology teacher, and I was English and then assistant principal.
Well, that was neat because you taught me, and I just had a wonderful time in your class. My brother, Bree, took Kevin's class, and of course, Kevin became one of his mentors and really helped get him involved in leadership. So my family's been really grateful to both of y'all. You grew up in Hammond. And, you know, a little backstory here and fill in the blanks, but you're the daughter of two legendary Hammond educators.
Yes.
Your father's probably the best known because he was not only the principal at Hammond High, but later would go on to be the dean of the school board. What's that like, leaving like Hammond's top educators and the purple versus green rivalry and coming down here? I guess starting with, how did Dad react to the news? Dad moving to Ponchatoula.
Dad was not happy, and he never would wear a green shirt to watch his grandchildren play in any sport. He would wear a Southeastern shirt.
Okay.
That was his...
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, his compromise was he would wear green with a Southeastern gold S or his purple. But my great aunt, Rose Wolfe, was a 1927 graduate of Southeastern Louisiana College. And it just opened in 25 and was a 2-year university or 2-year college for teaching.
Okay.
And she was the first to sing the Southeastern alma mater.
Oh, whoa, that's cool.
And she was a teacher and was my mother's role model and hero.
Okay.
And my mom grew up in Hammond, right across the street from the former East Side school in Hammond, and adored her aunt who took trips to Hawaii and Alaska and brought back items and told stories. And she thought that teaching was a hero's job, and that was an adventure. And she wanted to be a teacher. So Mom enrolled at Southeastern after graduating Hammond High, where she was a Tourette and very involved. And she was in her first class, and my dad was in the same class because he received a basketball scholarship to play basketball at Southeastern.
Yeah. He's a tall fella.
He's a big guy.
All of you on your side of the
Yes,
family
we're
are
all tall. And her last name was Kenny.
Okay.
And he was Link. So K and L were seated next to each other. So they met that first day of class and began dating. They were college sweethearts and got married. And then Kevin and I met at Southeastern and got married. And now our son, Greg, has met his bride at Southeastern, and they'll be married in a few weeks in October.
That's so exciting.
So we have a long history with not just Hammond schools, but at Southeastern.
But college romance over
College
there too.
romance is where it's at. And I went to lab school.
Oh, did
Southeastern
you? Okay.
Lab School, because I grew up in College Town subdivision. And so I was right across the street from Southeastern, went to University Lab School. And at the time, Hammond High was next door to the University Center. So I went to Hammond High. Okay. So my neighborhood, elementary, high school, and university were in a 2-block radius.
Oh, that's so cool. So you could walk there the whole time.
I walked all the time. Most of the time, rode a bike, walked, because I could get there. So moving.
It's been a long time since teachers could afford that neighborhood.
That's
some high dollar real estate there.
Okay, you're in the wrong neighborhood. You're in University Place.
Okay,
I was in College Town.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. I'm just thinking
but
the lab school district in general. People fight to get in there.
True. The College Town district was more of teachers, policemen, professors at the university were in there. So as a matter of fact, there were a number of them in there, but it was just a small.
Folks getting paid like the Larison and Crovetto families.
It was a different time with lab school. You know, lab school now you have to pay.
Okay,
but then there was a diversity there.
Okay,
and my father in 1972 spent the night in line. He and Jake Bailey spent the night in line so their children could get into the lab school. And then once you had kids in there, then we were able to move up. But it was wonderful, and it was the open concept where our classes were all in one big circle inside the Kiva area, and we were downstairs, and you had first through eighth in one big circle.
Oh, wow.
And I'm still friends with so many of those people, and a number of us are educators. I think being around that.
It's reminiscent like over here, we're just a few blocks from the old Collinswood school, and everybody in every grade's in one school.
We all knew each other, and we're still all connected.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Y'all must have great reunions.
We do, and we're all still part of each other's families. But being that close to everything, and going back to my bicycle, since you're the bicycle guru giving out the bikes, my bicycle was my freedom. And that was a different time in Hammond. So I'd say about 10 years old, I would have been about 76. 75, 76. I could ride my bike all over town. I would go to the book exchange and get books and trade out my comic books. I would ride over to my cousin's house on the other side. She lived on Holly Street, and I'd go visit her. I used to go to church at Woodland Park, the older building, not the one. And so I would ride my bike to Woodland Park and go to church and get back on my bike.
Crossing the tracks, going through downtown.
Yes, I knew every place where to stop, where to get my icy, go to Kate Street Park and swing, and I would get friends to ride with me. It was freedom. You had a bike you could ride, and it was safe.
Well, that's the same situation I had here in the 80s in Ponchatoula, and it's the reason we do the Bikes for Kids program.
Yes.
And, it is sad that as we grow and things get scarier, kids don't have that freedom. I can't imagine how a mom would do what my mom did and yours did, I'm sure, which was just let you go and tell you to get back for dark and not worry in the meantime.
And I'm so old. In College Town, there were lighted gas light poles, lamps, and we all had them. And they would come on at dark. And just like you see in comedy shows or on TV shows, when those lamps came on, you better be in the house. And so we could play outside all day. And going back to that reminiscing, that is why I bought in Weinberger Trace subdivision.
It's such a
Our
nice
lot
subdivision.
is in the very back. And we made sure we had a porch. We're one of the very few in there that have a porch, but we're across from the green space. So when our children were growing up, they could ride their bicycle in the big circle.
In a loop.
And they could build a fort out there of sticks. They could play with all the neighborhood kids. I wanted them to have that same atmosphere growing up that I had.
We had something similar growing up here in Ponchatoula in that we were across from Memorial Park. And, our first guest on the podcast was Brian McMahon, and he talked about the old 7th Street gang, which his son Brendan was a member. And, one of your colleagues who's now the assistant principal at Ponchatoula, Brandy Daniels, her husband Wesley was in the gang, and Bree and me and the Thompson kids and the Poches. And it's so important to have that common space, but near enough where mom can get on that porch and holler at you when it's time
and
to come in.
And playtime is so important.
For sure.
It's so important.
Just being outside.
Imagination and activity. And they didn't have to do a Play 60 promotion because kids were playing 180. You played as long as you could before you had to go in.
For sure. I'll be right back with the rest of our interview in just a moment. You know how car crash victims struggle to pay for the medical care they need? Well, at the Parker Larison Law Firm, we help busy families recover after car accidents so that they can rest easy, pay their medical expenses without worry, and move forward with their lives. We do this by sharing our free accident handbook, battling Goliath insurance companies, and treating our clients like family. Our clients say we help them save time and recover the money they deserve so that they can focus on getting well and living normal lives again. If you were injured in a car, truck, or motorcycle accident, give us a call now, 985-467-9525. Well, before we move past your parents, because I had the pleasure of knowing your mother, and of course I see your father from time to time with his breakfast gang at Lee's and Hammond.
Yes.
And they're both legends in the Hammond education community. Before we get into your career, what did you learn from them, or what advice did they give you when you got started out as an educator?
I watched Mom taught at low-income, socioeconomic disadvantaged children her whole life. She started in St. Tammany with special education, and then she moved back over to Tangipahoa, and she was at Crystal Street Academy for a number of years. No air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
Very little supplies. It was a small school. Most of the children came from the project area, and she loved them. Her whole life was devoted to them. And she would come home exhausted every day, and she'd need a little break, and then she'd get up and cook dinner. and then she'd start telling stories. She was a storyteller, and we laughed and we got to know kids, and she'd bring kids home and they would come have dinner with us, and she would take them to the store. At the time it was TG&Y and buy them their supplies or buy an outfit. At that time you could invite your students over. You could drive them around, and they adored her and she loved them. And then when they built the new school, the big Hammond East Side, she went out there and taught.
With AC, I hope, by then? Did she finally get
They had air conditioning, and I think that was about 1987 or something.
Well,
she finally got
for it. Wow.
Yes, it was.
Late.
She was hot for a long time. And she just felt, she came from very low poverty. This was like in the 1950s when she was a child. Her mother was the only divorcee around, and she was raising 3 children on a secretary's pay, and they had absolutely nothing. And she remembers teachers who made a difference, and she wanted to be like them. And she always taught my brother and me, you can make a difference. If you're an educator, if you're a nurse, if you're a fireman, policeman, she went through all of that, you know, that you can make a difference. And that's the most important and most rewarding career you can have. So she never really pushed the doctor, lawyer, medicine route, which, you know, would have really helped me. She felt that it was in our blood, and that's what we needed to do.
And she was right.
And she was right. We do have a passion for it. And then Dad, he started at Hammond High in 1962. And that was it. He was done. He fell in love. They loved him. My brother was born in 1963. And so we just grew up in Hammond High, at Hammond High, wherever it was, whenever it was open. And he loved it. And he became an assistant principal for years, and he was a coach, and then he became principal.
When did he become principal? Because I never knew him as anything but principal.
1993, he became a principal. He was like me. We were on the long-term assistant principal plan. He became assistant principal when his very best friend, Buddy Prejean, died of cancer. He was assistant principal, and Dad took his spot, and that was in 1977.
It sounds to me like the two of you were smart enough to realize assistant principal is the better job.
Absolutely is the better job.
You finally ran out of excuses. So
he went from 77 to 93.
Okay, wow.
And he became principal. He did a lot of things in between there. He was National Beta Club president for the whole board, for the whole country.
Wow, that's impressive.
And he was a referee with the...
Just for those of us that weren't smart enough to get in Beta Club, why don't you tell everybody
Beta
what that
Club is a service organization that is for honor students who want to commit to serving their community and learn about serving others and developing leadership skills. And it's a wonderful organization. And he was a sponsor at Hammond High for years. And as he worked his way up, he was a state officer, and then he became the National Beta Club president, and was really honored and decorated by that. He also was an official, a basketball official with the women's SEC, and he became the overseer of all the officials. I wish I could remember the name, but he was the assignment officer for years.
I knew about that because I have a few cousins, and my godfather were all SEC officials.
Gotcha. So that was another thing he did.
Link was a legend there.
He would have had to give everything up that he was enjoying. And once, by 91, we were all married, grandbabies were arriving, and it was time. And he became the principal at Hammond High. And when he retired in 98, he got on the school board and was on that for 16 years and never missed a meeting for 16 years.
You're kidding me. Perfect attendance?
Perfect attendance. He's an overachiever. But he always told me, my degree initially was in music theater.
Really?
I was going to Broadway.
Well, I'm not surprised because I watch you sometimes. You don't know we're watching online at First Baptist.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing. When my family misses, if we're sick and can't make it up to Mount Calvary
Isn't
Baptist.
that a great opportunity?
It's great,
We love our
I see you all the time.
webcam.
And you tell me, of course, you taught me drama.
Well, I try not to do too much Broadway when I'm in the church choir. I do that more when I'm in front of the students in the hallways trying to get their attention, or at the house. I'm really, really a great Broadway star. But my initial aspirations were to go to Broadway, be in musicals, sing, perform. I just have a performing
And what changed that? Because you have the chops for it, you have the talent.
Well, thank you.
I'm guessing.
I went and fell in love.
Kevin Crovetto.
Yes, I went and fell in love with that darn Crovetto. Just really hit me hard.
Okay.
I met him. We were engaged in 3 months, married within the year, and all I wanted was to get married and get a house and be with him. And
we give my parents have a similar story, and we always give them a hard time because they would, of course, try to talk us out of any 3-month engagement, marriage type situation. And like you, all it did was work out and last 45 years or whatever and counting. So that's neat. So where did y'all meet? Was it at Southeastern?
At Southeastern.
Okay. In class? Was it like, were you seated next to each other like your mom and dad? Or how did that work out?
Well, he was kind of dating a friend of mine.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And she came up to me the first day of class, our senior year, and she said, Kevin and I broke up, so come sit by me. I don't know if he's going to be here, but come sit by me. I said, you broke up. And when I saw him walk in, I went and sat by him. And he asked me out that day.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
That's really neat.
Right. Wow. And so I decided, I guess I couldn't go to Broadway. Yeah. Although he may have followed me, I don't know, but I wasn't taking that chance. He was trying to get a teaching job so he could pay for us to get married. So.
Well, how long were the two of you married before Greg came along?
We were married 3 years when Greg was born. Greg's birthday is November 27th. Our anniversary is November 12th, which this year will be our 30th anniversary.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes, it is. So
help me do the math here. What year was that? What year?
We met in 87. We married in 88. We had a little apartment in Hammond. And when I was offered the job at Ponchatoula High, we bought a house out on Old Sawmill Road.
I remember when you guys were in high school at the time.
We bought that house in 1990, and it was really difficult for me to convince him that we needed to buy a house because we would pay less for a house note than we were paying in rent. And he gave me all kinds of stipulations. It had to have a big yard, had to have a garage for his tools, and he wanted a fireplace. Yeah. And I found it. And at that time, that house was $49,000.
You're kidding me.
At 10% interest rate. Wow. And this is my way of getting in that house, and I can give my props to my dad. We couldn't get in it because we didn't have a down payment.
Right.
And so my dad had to write a letter of donation to us.
Okay.
And he gave us the money for the down payment. And he said, I promise you, you will never not make a house payment. Never worry about your home.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was it. And we never did miss a house payment, but knowing that sweet daddy was going to be there in case I needed him was very special.
And that had to take a lot for him to write that check for back a Ponchatoula house. Because you could have commuted from his precious Hammond. That's neat.
He was very supportive. And
well, I remember when I was your student, you're teaching us drama, and you had to leave, for pregnancy. You had the baby, so now the timeline's kind of completing there. So that would have been Greg, your firstborn.
Right.
How long until?
Actually, with you, what year did you graduate?
Well, I got out in 95, so maybe
I'm thinking I was
there. Maybe I wasn't in drama yet.
You were in drama. Okay. You were in drama. When I took a leave then, I was struggling to try to have a baby.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's part of my ministry. I do a ministry of infertility with women. And when they are struggling, I go to them and I say, hey, I've been through this. And
we've been through that. It took my parents 5 years to have me.
Wow.
And Brandy and I were married 4 years and trying for
So you understand. I waited a while, even though it doesn't sound like it for Greg. It took a little while. But then I started having all kinds of issues. And boy, all I wanted to do was have babies. And so I took a leave to get healthy and to get Dr. Von Allman was my doctor, and he guided me through all of it. And I had Mariana in 98.
Oh, wow.
And then I had Alexandra in 2001. And since then, the girls go with me, and even Greg, neat story about Greg, he had a lot of faith. He prayed with me all the time. And kindergarten was when I got pregnant with his sister, and I had 3 moms stop me in carpool and said, will you please tell your son to quit praying for us to have babies? Because he had convinced all his friends that you can get a baby brother or sister, just pray for your, you just have to go pray for it. And then when he was in 6th grade, his teacher, Miss Acosta, had struggled for years to have a baby. And I just talked to her about this the other day. And he and I went over there and we laid hands on her and prayed over her. And the next month she called and she said, I'm going to have a baby.
Wow, that's neat.
So she was remembering that story in my office the other day. And I said, well, that builds faith in children because, you have children go and pray.
For sure.
The Lord wants to honor the prayers of a faithful child.
Absolutely,
So now I take the girls with me when we go places and I show women, hey, here's my miracles right here. And when I was told, I will never have any more. I have 2 more.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
Miracles happen. One of those is your good friend, Jerry Bankston, Jerry and Philip.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, we had prayed over Jerry and she had, there's a lot of people. And I know they don't mind me saying because we minister to people all over and share our story that they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. So sometimes we have to wait.
I've seen it, but of course I wasn't around to remember when that happened with my mom.
I wasn't probably explaining that to my children and your mom probably didn't tell you a whole lot about it, but.
No, but she told us later and, especially, because as you know, I got married later than most.
Right.
So, man, when
you waited for perfection.
I waited for, you had a Southeastern love story. I have a Strawberry Festival love story. So Hammond and Ponchatoula can be good to you love-wise.
Yes.
But I was ready to go. And 4 years was not the wait I expected. But you're right. The Lord had a plan and He took care of us.
His plan is best. That's right.
My boys are really, special. And speaking of prayers, Luke has started a really cute habit at night of praying for his buddies at school.
Oh, I love it.
And the last few weeks, he's been praying for our friend Will Richardson's kid, Fisher. So at night, we ask Luke who he wants to pray for. And Mama always makes the list. His Nana always makes the list. I'm there sometimes.
Okay.
But now Fisher Richardson just started making the cut. So that's pretty neat. But that's so important to pray with your children.
It is so important to teach them. Just pray out loud. Pray for whoever wants prayer and claim it. Yeah. So it's good stuff.
Well, obviously your faith's very important to you.
Yes.
You're involved, musically. Tell us about that. I mean, what else do you do? Or tell me about what that means to you. Just it's such an important part of your life.
Yes, my faith is what defines me.
You're comfortable, communicating
Absolutely.
about it. So please share that with our listeners.
That goes back to my mom, and I can tell it's a story I tell, and it's even on her headstone because it was her life verse about repairing the breach, restoring not the curses of generations, but it's a generational curse and bridges that need to be restored and breaches that are open that you're restoring. Mom came from a history of divorce, alcoholism, gambling, many issues, mental illness, a lot of challenges in her family. And she had become a Christian around 30 and claimed that she was going to break the generational curses from her children and that was not going to continue in our generational lines. And so every night, she was on her knees by our bed, my brother and me, and she'd pray with us. And as young as 6 or 7, she would start us praying for the man or woman that God would have us to marry.
Oh, wow.
And that we would pray for wisdom in that decision. And she would pray for protection over them and just many different things. But she always was real open about, well, that's Holy Spirit discernment. Or let's talk about that. What does the Bible say about that? It was never anything hellfire and brimstone. And it was never, you have to go to church and you have to be good. It was always, hey, let's see what the Bible says about that. Hey, let's pray and ask God to show us. So the psychological side of that was, as a teenager, we would want to go do something. Like maybe there was a party or we were going out with my brother with a girl or me with a boy. And Mom would say, well, if you feel like that's the young man God would send you, then I have no problem with you going out. Well, then you start thinking, I'm not sure if this is the kind.
It was,
and you say, well, and a lot of times my brother would say, yep, that's just the woman God wants me, and he knew he was wrong, but he was trying to be funny. But she used that to where you started really believing that you could use discernment in this decision making.
Yeah, for sure.
So we both ended up marrying Christians. My husband is a Christian, my sister-in-law is a Christian, and the 4 of us became the best of friends. only God could make my brother my husband's best friend. You know, it's like, what a blessing. I have one brother and my husband is his best friend. They share everything. My sister-in-law is amazing. We raised our babies together and just did everything together. And now they celebrated 30 years in January. We celebrated 30 years. Our children that are married have all married Christian spouses. Oh, wow. And we have not divorced. Yeah. We don't have mental illness. So, we don't have physical illness. We don't have trouble with alcoholism or any other type of addictions. Yeah. And it's not, I mean, it's from a mother's prayer on her knees claiming restoration in this generation. So her legacy will be strong marriages, Christian children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and that's the best legacy.
What a great demonstration of the power of prayer.
Yes.
I mean, just wow.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, one of our favorite stories, the Sunday before Mom died was Mother's Day. And she had cooked a big gumbo and we'd all been there and had a wonderful time. And my dad had called her. Now, they'd been divorced 35 years when he called. But he called her to wish her happy Mother's Day. And he told her, I want you to know, our children are the amazing, wonderful adults they are because of you and how you raised them and brought church to them and the Lord to them. And I will always appreciate you and be in debt for that. And then she died on Wednesday. Whoa. So it's like, Dad, if that wasn't Holy Spirit led,
of course.
She got confirmation from him. He appreciated her the whole time. Yeah. And he told her. So that's a message to people who are listening. Yeah. Let your thoughts be known. Yeah. Tell people if you love them and appreciate them. But when she knew that he recognized that we were different because of her teachings and her faith, that was a blessing. Yeah. So, and our kids have learned from that too.
That's an amazing story.
Yes.
I didn't know much.
So we're involved in First Baptist Church here. Yeah. And our kids are very involved in the church, and our kids are still involved in the Ponchatoula schools.
It's a great church. I have so many of my heroes that have been,
and they're so supportive of me at the new school, and they've come over and fed our teachers and cleaned the area, so they do a lot. And my former church is the Mission. They're feeding the teachers, and they've helped too. And it's just wonderful to have so much community support.
We've got some great churches in this area, and when hard times struck, and the first thing that comes to mind is the flood.
Oh, yes.
They really proved it. They just stepped up in every direction.
Yeah. And I'm the 11th and 12th grade Sunday school teacher. And my students were under trailers pulling out wet insulation and rebuilding things in the mud and bringing hot meals. Yeah. They learned a lot from the floods. And the church provided what we needed, but the kids provided the manpower, the labor. And they learned from that you have to, you're out of school, but that means get up there and start helping.
Speaking of kids getting out there and serving their communities, of course, we don't have the time to cover all that you've done at Ponchatoula High and now at the junior high. But one of the things I've seen up close and personal and appreciated has been your leadership of the Interact Club. And you sponsored that club for many years. You've been a member of the Rotary. Tell us about that and what they do in the community and just, what that means to you.
The Interact Club is a group of students who have very good GPA, grade point average, and no attendance issues and no discipline issues. Okay. Because I am going to entrust them out into the community many times without me. The parents give me permission to sign them out of school. They get in their cars and they get into town and they will volunteer at the community center. They help set up for the art and wine stroll or for the Christmas lighting, different things like that. They do a dictionary distribution to the third graders and they go and give that out. That's the Rotary Literacy Project.
And if I'll jump in there, we love it because the Rotarians show up and we take the credit while the high school kids do all the hard work of packing boxes of books around.
Oh,
so thank you for that.
They love it. They love going. That's a great field trip for them. They love being with the third graders. Many of them still have their yellow dictionary that they got when they were third grade. And we go to this festival. And like we've said a couple of times, my students fill 96 shifts during Strawberry Festival for Rotary. And which
enables our club to make tons of money that's distributed into the charity.
And they can go get the bags of ice and they serve the lemonade and the jambalaya. And it's good because they learn you're not going to sit all weekend and play. Although it's great. I'm glad they have the festival. You're going to give a little piece of your time to serve your community. And the money raised goes right back to scholarships for our students. So it's a very worthy cause to do that. And they've collected coats in the winter.
Yeah.
When the Hurricane Harvey hit in Texas, they collected bottles of water, baby wipes, diapers, formula, things like that, because the Hammond Airport had a couple of little mini prop planes that were flying into remote areas, dropping off these items. And so we raised money. It cost $150 in gas to get there and back. So we would raise money for that. And then we'd raise money for the items. Yeah. And they would do the Humane Society, the animal shelter, collecting blankets and food and toys, and they'll go there and clean out cages.
So that's a packed schedule. You guys are working.
They do a lot. I have over 100 members, and they all want to participate. And a lot of it is they just like to get together.
Now I notice you're speaking in the present tense. Are you still able to stay involved even though
I am. Yes. Okay. I'm the Rotary representative, and then Jeremy Harper is the new Interact sponsor.
Oh, okay.
So we work together. I'm teaching him, guiding him. It's along the same premise as Danny Williams has worked with Kiwanis,
with Key Club.
Even though he's not at the high school, and then he has a sponsor on staff at the high school. So it's that partnership, community with the school. Yeah. So I kept that going.
Hopefully, Mr. Danny, if you're listening, we want you to be our guest one of these days. Unlike Miss Crovetto, I know you have a lot of time on your hands to do this podcast.
Actually, Mr. Williams has been teaching out at the high school.
Wait, what? I didn't know that.
Yes, we have a teacher who had to take a sabbatical, and they hired Mr. Williams. So he's been getting up early every day and going to teach English 3.
Wow. Well, my wife and I, we take him to dinner every year over the Christmas break, and we just booked it this year about a week ago. So I'm eager, eager to hear about that. He's kind of made the full circle.
Yes, he has.
But, he's a great man. Speaking of First Baptist heroes of mine, he's certainly
and he was in choir with me and all of that.
Well, we've been alluding to your transition from many years as the vice principal or assistant principal at Ponchatoula to now principal of the junior high. Why don't we go backwards a bit and talk about the start of your career in education at Hammond High School, moving to Ponchatoula. Just kind of walk us through the history of your career and the highlights that mean the most to you.
Well, I was at Emmanuel Baptist Church, just had graduated, planning my wedding, and Dr. Beth Moles was a member there. And I was walking to my car one day, and she came up and she said, "Have you found a job yet?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, I have an English teaching spot if you will sponsor the flag team." I said, "You got it."
Was she principal?
She was principal at Hammond High at the time. It was 1988. And so I went over there, and I had to do that on a day-by-day sub basis because at the time there were rules, and my dad was assistant principal.
Okay.
So I was not allowed to stay, and Mr. Virgil Allen gave me a call because Mr. A.J. Bodker had told him to give me a call and offered me an English spot there. So I started at Ponchatoula High teaching English 1. And when Miriam Summers took a sabbatical, I was able to take over her speech and drama classes for a number of years. And that's where I met all of the illustrious Ponchatoula kids
that's where you had the
Parker Larison, Will Richardson, Lewis Sanders.
All buddies of mine. Yeah,
all of them.
Crew.
I'm trying to think of Chad Roberts. Joyner.
Isn't it amazing, Stormy? I mean, you see these guys now. Stormy's the fire chief, and Bree's the police chief.
I did say that when I was. I don't want to get political. But I did say in the Kavanaugh hearings, if we're going to hold everything against people of what they did in high school, then they better lock me up somewhere where I can't tell any stories, or we won't.
Tangipahoa Parish wouldn't have a single official in any capacity around here.
And so during that time, I was a big sponsor of the flag team. I went from Hammond High over to Ponchatoula High. Diana Hastings and I got a flag team started under Teddy Forrest when he started the band program.
I love Mr. Forrest. He's great.
And so we had I was with the flag team for a number of years, and then I switched over to cheerleaders, and that's where I got with Rachel McLaughlin and Brandy, Willie, and all of that crew were in there. Sharon Miller. I'm sure you remember all those. Nicole Barnes, Jill Taylor.
Those are all my clients and buddies.
Those are all girls of mine. And then when I had to take a sabbatical and started having babies, I took a break from that and went back and started the Bible as Literature class. I was the first one to teach that and design the curriculum for the Bible as Literature. And we had that for a number of years until I became assistant principal. Steve Grigas took it over and made it Bible as History because he wanted to teach that.
That's another one of my heroes.
There's lots of heroes.
What an amazing teacher
he was great. And he was a great mentor. We sponsored FCA together. So if you go through my resume, I've pretty much sponsored Drama Club, FCA, Cheerleaders, Color Guard, Flag Team. I can't even think of all the things, but it's okay because I just loved it. And having my children at the school, I was going to be there anyway, so I might as well just sign up for everything.
The thing about you is you bring such an immense amount of enthusiasm to everything you do.
It's genuine. I'm genuinely enthusiastic about being among teenagers. I really enjoy it. There's not a lot of people who could say that.
Right.
But
well, especially say it for this many years.
Oh,
how
teenagers
many start
are great.
Out on fire, but by year 3, 5, 10, whatever, are just burnt. And, here you are blowing and going, as upbeat today as you were when I was a freshman at PHS.
And I always promised myself when I no longer loved it, I would leave because who wants to be around somebody who doesn't like kids or want to be there? Right. I still want to be there. Yeah. I want to be in their lives. Kevin has been enjoying seeing all the new little ones. We go into Rouse's or we go to Walmart and I'm getting hugs left and right. And the high schoolers, they'll say hello. Right. Those junior high babies, they want hugs. And they have long stories they want you to listen to. So that's been fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Kevin's, an accomplished educator himself.
Yes.
And I want to gloss over his career.
Well, no,
really
he was
impressive.
a Tangipahoa Parish Teacher of the Year.
Right.
And he was president of the Teachers Union, the Tangipahoa Federation of Teachers. He has lobbied for teacher rights at the State Department. He's gone head-to-head with Bobby Jindal. Don't even get him started on Bobby Jindal and the state police issue and so forth. And he is an proponent of teachers and of educators and of industrial arts. Sometimes people say, "Oh, shop teacher." Yeah, he taught a whole lot more than shop.
For sure, and
his people are out and everywhere.
Man. I just remember my brother who was fortunate enough to get great leadership from his football coaches, and had a great dad at home and a lot of people to guide him. But your husband really broke through, and it was through that. And I don't remember the name of the club that corresponds to his industrial arts, but he sponsored the organization. Yeah,
it was TSA. Technology Student Association. Bree was the president.
And he loved
Robert
it.
Graves was in there, and Marshall.
It was a great crew. Yes. And Marshall's still, good buddy of mine. I haven't seen Graves in a while, but what a character.
Yes.
But he really taught those guys how to become men.
Responsibility, self-discipline.
Boys. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
And I just never forget. I'm at Tulane with Will, and we're having fun. And I come back, and Bree's working the summer for my dad, like renovating apartments, and he's doing like real men work that I would never know how to do, and creating things out of nothing and in thin air. And it was because of your husband.
Yes, he took great pride in raising young men up and giving them hands-on experiences. He learned that from his own father. Yeah. So he wanted to perpetuate that because he lost his father at a young age. He was only 19.
I didn't know that.
And so he wanted to carry on all of that his dad had taught him about hands-on and responsibility. Greg went to college, and he was in a fraternity, and he was the only one there who knew how to change oil in a car. I mean, it was like he had to do lessons in the parking lot. Guys, this is how you change a tire, and this is how you change oil. That's really because people, it's just not a learned art anymore unless you've got it. But no, Kevin he's a great man of God, and he's the president of the deacons at First Baptist, leads men's groups there. And nobody really believes us until they actually come to the house. But I do, as strong as my personality is, I do believe the man is the head of the home. And Kevin is the head of our family and the head of our home. And I'm the nurturer and the encourager and the entertainment director.
For sure.
And the kids know that Dad is, and that's the way I do believe that's the way it should be.
With a great one.
Yes,
and
he's easy to follow.
Yeah,
he's easy to follow. He's a great leader.
Yeah, he's a righteous man. He really is. Speaking of great men, your son Greg has developed into
the greatest of men.
Yeah,
yes,
tell us about him. And he's now coaching and teaching at Hammond High. Is that right?
Greg has a master's degree in organizational communication from Southeastern, and he had a grad assistantship at the Pennington Center where he did a lot of the health fairs and occupational type therapy things with the equipment. And he was in between jobs and started subbing. Shelley Gatos saw something really neat in him, mainly, I think, classroom management.
Yeah.
He had an excellent rapport with the kids, and he didn't have any discipline problems. Well, that's just gold in education these days. So she said, I know you're not thinking of education, but would you consider just giving me a year and teaching the allied health and some technology classes in the IB program. And he said, oh, sure, I'll try it. And then the coach said, well, since you're here, would you like to coach?
Mr. Football Star.
Yeah, so last year was his first year, and he did the Allied Health program, and the Integrating Technology into a Global Society is his IB class that he teaches in the baccalaureate program. And his 9th grade football team went 9-0, undefeated last year. And so this year, Coach Jones used that O-line as his starting lineup for the Hammond varsity squad.
Starting lineup. That's impressive.
So it's impressive. He's doing a great job coaching and teaching. I'm starting to push him into administration. I feel that he needs to start working on that because it's in his blood.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to get away from it. And so we think he's going to really make a difference. He's a good role model for young men.
Well, he's just so smart. He worked here with me for probably 4 or 5 years, at least 4 years, I think, when he was in college. And you could throw anything at Greg and he would figure it out.
Yes, he loves that challenge.
Academic type issue, he's got you covered. Something as simple as, dropping something off, he'll get it done quickly, safely. All the boxes you want to check, he's just a remarkable guy.
His dad poured all that into him. The mama was spoiling him.
But he's also got your gift of gab.
He's got my goofiness.
You talk about an entertainer. Greg is a guy, folks, that we would literally invite to our end of the year Christmas party. We do a steak lunch here with the firm at the end of every year. And long after Greg left here to go on to bigger, better things, we would invite him to lunch because we wanted to hear all his stories.
Oh, he can do impressions.
He was captivated the whole time.
Yes, he is. Yeah. He's quite entertaining.
Yeah.
And
he's about to marry the love of his life.
He's marrying Macy Jones. They met at Southeastern. I do. She's a beautiful woman. She was just promoted to director of Greek life at Southeastern.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So she's going to work there, and he's just bought a house in Ponchatoula.
Oh, neat. That's
so right by Berryland Campers, he can zip on the airport road to get to Hammond High, but still be in Ponchatoula. Yeah. And I know how quickly I can get to his house from mine. So
well, I'm glad you kept him on this side of the interstate.
I am glad to have him. I think my girls are going to leave me, but he's going to stay.
Well, speaking of your girls and in-laws you love, Mariana's been married here. She was the first to take that plunge.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier to a fine Christian man.
Yes, he's a wonderful boy.
She's such a beautiful, bright, wonderful woman, as is Alexandra. But tell us about your girls. How
Mariana surprised everyone by the second date. She came home and said, I've met the man I'm going to marry. She had just turned 20.
Okay.
And was she 20? No, she had just turned 19, told me that.
Oh, wow.
She got 20 when she got married. And I said, okay. And I kind of took her seriously because Mariana's never been a real silly type person. And he was in the military. Daniel serves as a helicopter mechanic in the Army, and he is stationed in Korea. Okay. And they talked about it from pretty much day one. And so when they were talking in December, he said, I get leave in May. And when I come home in May, we're getting married. And she said, okay. And I started planning. That was it. And Kevin was all for it. He said we couldn't have found a greater guy. So Daniel's in Korea and she's living at home. She's on scholarship at Southeastern.
Okay.
So
she's studying?
She's studying sports management.
Okay.
Her emphasis is in Special Olympics options. Her desire, her eventual desire is to build a facility for special needs adults who can, like a Pennington Center, but a Pennington Center adaptive. That special needs adults can go in and they can have the walking track, the pools, all the things they need for physical therapy. And she's president of Best Buddies at Southeastern, and they have a partnership with Options. So she goes there every other week with her buddy, and they plan parties and activities. She just did Ballin' for Options, the activity. She has a heart for, and she works with Special Olympics. So her degree, she was going into event planning, but she wasn't sure that was the route. So they advised her sports management because that's a broader area.
And she's in the right spot because we're blessed here with great special needs charities.
Yes.
You mentioned Options. There's TARC. Special Olympics has an office in Hammond.
Yes.
We now have the cutting edge, Little Miss Special Louisiana pageant. There's just so much more going on here than some other areas.
And she's just really into that. And with Daniel, I think he's going to re-enlist. They're talking about sending him to pilot school. So he will travel the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And wherever she goes, she will have people to service because there's going to be that population who need
So second
workers.
date. Wow, that's amazing.
Second date,
Sometimes
they clicked.
you just know. You mentioned Mr. Bacher earlier. His granddaughter Megan Megan Kelly works here with me. And a very similar story. She told her mother on the first date,
yes,
I'm going to marry this boy.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Brittany Bordelon and Pellegrino.
Right, yeah.
Their parents, their mama set them up, and they went to dinner, and both went home and said, met the guy I'm going to marry, met the girl.
Juliana Dufresh.
Same thing.
Same thing.
It's just neat to watch, and you have to trust your kids. You raise them right. Now, Alexandra, I don't think she's planning a wedding anytime soon, thank goodness. That's my senior at Ponchatoula High. She is currently Miss Strawberry Teen.
Right, and she's competing on what is it, the statewide?
This weekend, she is running for Miss Teen Louisiana.
Right, okay.
And she will have an evening gown competition, interview.
So you and Kevin aren't retiring for a long time, because I know how expensive that is.
Well, Kevin is planning to retire in 2 years, and then he said he will just travel the circuit with the children.
Not if she gets Miss Teen Louisiana, because that's a lot more evening gowns to buy there.
It is. I need to go see Tammy Earls more often. But she
what
will.
What a great neighbor to have.
Yes, she will. She is. Mariana graduated summa cum laude, and Alexandra will graduate. Hopefully, she's on that 4.0 track, and we're going to LSU.
But they had the best. Greg was a great student, but
Greg was a great student.
Mariana edge him by a little bit or something?
Yes, he told her she would never be as smart as him. So she made sure she got 1 point higher on her GPA than he did. And but we go October 8th. Alexandra, everybody in the family went to Southeastern, but she's going to tour LSU on Monday and Louisiana Tech next, the 29th of October. She's interested in biomedical research, and those are some really strong programs there. So she may be mine that goes off. I don't know. We shall see. But I just love that they have options. And she's president of the student council.
Well, she'll be in good shape. I have one nephew that's he's still at LSU, but he's been to all three of those schools. So
and what's his opinion?
Loves them all. I mean, he fell in love with a beautiful LSU girl, so he made his way from the football team at Louisiana Tech to Southeastern. And
girls have that way of
his true love. But, we were along for the ride, and I'm impressed with all those schools.
Sure. It'll be fine.
Well, I've kept you a long time today, so I don't want to keep you much longer. But one thing I ask all our guests is about the city of Ponchatoula. You mentioned earlier why you're here.
Yes.
Why you stayed here when you and Kevin could be anywhere in the world. How do you think Ponchatoula, Hammond, our greater area here is doing now? Where do you see us going? I mean, just what are your thoughts as someone who's spent a whole lifetime here in this community? How's it changed?
It's definitely changed. It's grown. It's changed. There's more businesses. There's more people. I think the nicest change I've seen is the people who moved here after Katrina. Our people from Chalmette and Laplace and New Orleans and all around have acclimated and love it. And they have such ownership in it. And so those of us who moved here and those of us who came later and those of you who were raised here and born here, we've all blended now. If you go to Rotary, it's a mix of us. You go to Kiwanis, it's a mix. Go on the back patio at Ruin Brew. There's an eclectic mix, and we all love it. And we're happy just to be sitting there together, talking at church. They welcome everybody at First Baptist. Some have come from other religions. Doesn't matter. Come in. St. Joseph always has its doors open. Ready to serve. What do you need? It depends, and it doesn't matter what religion. It doesn't matter what neighborhood. It's just so nice to see people come together. I have had one of the things I've enjoyed about being at the junior high. Everybody from old Ponchatoula has a story about the building. They have a memory. They have a
I know that because my dad almost burned the place down.
See, there's a story.
He's always telling that story.
Yes, and people who skipped and or threw the green chickens over the fence from Hammond High into Ponchatoula. There's always a story, but they love the building and they want to come by and see the building and they want to tell me their stories. I love that pride in your community. People have stories about the Kiwanis log cabin. They want to share, and I try to impart that to the students when I was at the high school and now at the junior high. Every time we did awards day, and all of the local scholarship people would come. And there's these scholarships in memory of those we've lost, like Charlie Landry.
Well, we sponsor one here for Tommy Waterman.
Tommy Waterman. And I'll tell the kids, listen, you may not know, you may not understand, but this is a young man who was here just like you
Charlie was,
and played sports, and his family goes out every year and raises money. Or you don't know Charlie, I mean, you don't know Tommy Waterman, but he gave, and he gave to this community. He's a part of Ponchatoula, and they want to honor him by giving you this money to go to college and further. And it's like there's so much they keep trying to keep the traditions going.
Yeah, for sure.
The Strawberry Festival Board gives money to the ag department every year, and they're keeping the strawberry industry alive, teaching our kids how to grow strawberries. That's something that's very important. And they may not become a strawberry farmer, but they're going to have a couple of rows when they get a piece of land.
Identity.
Yes.
Even though most of the strawberry fields around here are now subdivisions.
Yes, yes.
And we need them. We have plenty of people here, and for me to stay in business here, we need people to pay the bills, and that's true for every business here. But we need to know our heritage, and we need to know why Strawberry, Acres or why Strawberry Stadium at Southeastern is called Strawberry Stadium, and that keeps that alive.
It's part of their heritage, and they need to know it.
I couldn't have met my wife at the Strawberry Festival.
That's right. That's a great place to meet a wife, huh? Strawberry Fest, and that's near and dear too.
Let me ask you this: what would you like to share that we haven't talked about? Is there any way that our listeners can help you, your school? Just, anything what we've missed.
I would love your listeners to come visit. I welcome any visitors who want to come by. We already have a number of sponsors. And every time someone sponsors us, 100% it goes to the kids. Except you. You sponsor our Teacher of the Month, which has been a wonderful success because the students are writing the nominations out.
That's really neat.
And the teachers nominate each other. And then we add up whoever has the most nominations, and we put their names in a hat.
Thanks for letting me be part of that.
And then you recognize the students, and the teachers recommend the students and tell about why. You can't just put a name. You have to tell why.
Have to explain it
and so they're getting recognized for that. And then some of that money for Student of the Month goes into the Positive Behavior Program, where we can reward with like popsicles on the porch or volleyball game day or something like that. But then like the Methodist Church had dinners, sold dinners, and they brought me $500 for needy children to buy uniforms or supplies for whoever needs it, and $500 for our athletic program. So our football generates a good amount of money, and basketball generates, but there's some smaller athletic teams who really needed a boost, even if it's a $50 or $100 donation for them to buy some equipment.
That's something I was surprised to learn in law school when I took sports law, was that, and this is at the NCAA level, there are only two sports that consistently make money in college, and that's men's basketball and football.
Yes.
There are exceptions,
Yes.
Tennessee women's basketball will make a pile of money. LSU baseball will make a pile of money.
Yes.
But your average school doesn't make money at those sports.
It doesn't.
So when you trickle down to the, lesser attended sports,
and to that effect, you have like Ponchatoula High brings in a lot of money for football. Ponchatoula Junior High brings in a lot of money for football. And then you have those coaches who allow some of that money raised to pay for stipends for coaches of girls basketball or a coach for volleyball, because they know they don't have it, but they support the other teachers and the education. It's a team mentality. They don't say, this is my money. They say, I know Coach Hank sometimes would say, hey, we're going to feed the teachers for Christmas, or hey, make sure that student has what he needs to be able to participate, because sometimes maybe it's $100 fee to play volleyball and the kid doesn't have it. There's some coach or some teacher who'll come out and just write a check. So I guess my plea, my suggestion to listeners is, if you want to do something like that, if you want to sponsor a child or a club or an athletic event, I'm not taking your money and putting it somewhere. It's going to the kids. It's a wonderful blessing so that everybody can participate, and to recognize teachers like that, like you're doing, is a big deal.
One nice thing about having someone like you with the credibility in our community that's been here this long. Because I can tell you,
it does mean something.
Owner, I know you mentioned earlier the team. I remember you being Brandy Willie and Rachel McLaughlin's cheerleading sponsor. And so I know you did it right when I was there 20 years ago. And so anybody listening, please know that she is sincere. Thank you for your time. Please give my best wishes to your wonderful family.
Thank you.
Keep Greg in my prayers, and the rest of them, as marriages unfold, and It's a wonderful, happy time in your life.
It's been wonderful.
It's a challenging
yes.
one, too, getting used to sharing your life with others. So please tell him I'm thinking about him as this big day approaches. And please, give my best to your family.
I will. Thank you.
We're back for our Taste of Tangi section. Now, if you heard our first few episodes of the podcast, you know that we recommended several restaurants, and really at different ends of the spectrum. First time out, we talked about Ristorante Foodies, which is fine dining in Ponchatoula, some of the best Italian food you'll ever eat. The next restaurant we recommended was Hi-Ho Number One. This is just an institution in the Hammond area that has some satellite locations all over the area, including here in Ponchatoula. But it's just great, casual, fast food. And the star of the show there are their barbecue sandwiches. There are pork sandwiches and beef sandwiches, among other more traditional offerings such as hamburgers and such. But today, we're going to go in a different direction and not talk about a restaurant, but rather talk about a catering operation that is totally incredible and one of a kind, and most importantly, located right here in Ponchatoula. Fine Time Catering is our third Taste of Tangi recommendation. Now, those of us in Ponchatoula know the Poche family pretty well if we've been around here for long at all, because there are great Poches doing great things in just about every direction, some serving in government, some serving in the private sector, just doing great things. It's a wonderful family. It's a large family. And the Poche who owns Fine Time Catering is special to me because he's one of my little brother Louie's best friends for all his life. And that's Chef Brian Poche. Chef Brian Poche is a classically trained chef. He is a graduate of culinary school. He's worked at a ton of restaurants and cooked some of the best food you'll ever eat all over. And so Fine Time Catering is his business that he and his wonderful wife, Megan, have started from scratch here in Ponchatoula. It's located on the east side of town on Pine Street. And they can cater anything you want, from the best event of your life, your wedding, to smaller events. They do it all. They do fine French food. They do barbecue. They do everything in between. We've used them many times in my family. In fact, they also have a meal service that provides meals on Wednesdays. So my wife, Brandy, and I will order food for our boys, and we eat some great food on Wednesdays delivered to us by Chef Poche's team. We've also hired them every year for our kids' birthday parties, finger foods, you name it. These guys are just great. I could tell you, I've never had a single thing of food from them that I didn't like. And some of the things I've had, I just love and can't wait to get again. So check them out. They've got a great website, and that's Fine Time. And time is spelled Thyme, like the herb thyme, not like a clock time. But check it out. I think you'll find Chef Poche to be very professional. He's going to be on time. The food's going to be outstanding. One thing I should have probably mentioned that I love that they do, that you should definitely consider if you're feeding a large group or if you just don't like to cook, is their holiday menu is exceptional. They will fry turkeys for you, cook hams, all the sides, giant trays of stuffing or dressing, whatever you prefer to call it. They are just great. And I can't say enough good things about Fine Time Catering because, one, I know these people and they are great, hardworking people that you can trust. And two, their food just speaks for itself. There's some photos on their website and their Facebook page that are just going to jump off the page at you, make you salivate. You're going to be hungry looking at it. And I can promise you will not regret hiring Fine Time Catering. So check it out. They're our Taste of Tangi number 3. And we hope you enjoy Fine Time Catering here in Ponchatoula. Thank you. We're back with Parker's Pick, which is the section of the podcast where I recommend something. Sometimes it's a product. Sometimes it's a service. Sometimes it's, just something that I think is a cool idea, but something that I've tried myself and really am a firm believer in. Now, I mentioned last episode, and I want to reiterate here, I do not receive any compensation whatsoever from the people that I endorse in the Parker's Pick section of the podcast. So I don't want you to think that I'm making money off of this recommendation or question my motives. I'm recommending these things or these people or these services because they are products or services that I have purchased and really been satisfied with. And I want to share that with you because in today's world, you have literally hundreds, if not thousands of options for most things that you would consume. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out who's the best or who would be a good fit or who's trustworthy or who's worth the price, etc. So with that being said, this next thing that I'm going to recommend is probably going to get me in hot water with some of my friends. And so maybe it wasn't the wisest idea in the world to go in this direction, but I was been so, overwhelmingly happy with the services provided by this company over the years that I just have to recommend them. So I'm going to recommend a real estate company here. So in case you're looking for property in the Ponchatoula, Hammond area, and that could be commercial or residential or undeveloped. I've bought all three types of property using this company. They've been incredibly helpful each time. And they have also advised me on deals I didn't do. But it's Branch Real Estate Company, located right here in Ponchatoula, just a couple of blocks away from my office at the corner of Pine Street and 5th Street. Now, I said I was going to get in hot water because Ponchatoula and Hammond is literally stacked with tons of great real estate agents. Okay, I have several friends that I did not mention, that aren't employed by Branch Real Estate, that are great realtors, and they do a wonderful job, and they have my complete trust and an enormous respect. So here I'm just picking from among a lot of good choices. So to my friends out there that I didn't mention, I'm sorry. Some of you I'm going to invite on this podcast, and I hope you accept it. But I want to go with the company that I've used and trusted with my own real estate here, and that's Branch Real Estate. Why Branch? Well, one, they've been around forever. I think this is a third generation real estate company. The Branch family has been in Ponchatoula for well over 100 years. They've been respected that entire time. They've run businesses, among multiple generations, among multiple types of businesses, and they're just really well respected. They're a good family. And they hire people that are like them. So the owner, Charlene Daniels, and she's Charlene Branch Daniels, and her partner and son, Wesley Daniels, who's a dear friend of mine, just bring a lot of integrity and knowledge to the real estate world. And they've hired great people. So people like Sharon Carter, born and bred right here in Ponchatoula, who's doing well. They've got a whole big team of great realtors, Logan Davis, many more I can name. So forgive those that I'm leaving out. But basically, I just want to let you know, when I needed to buy an office and had a really limited budget and it just needed to be perfect, the location, the type, they found the best deal for me. And if you ever, visit me here in my office, which I'd love to see you, you'll see it's just the perfect fit for me and my practice. And they made that happen. And I'm forever grateful for that. When I needed to buy a house, when I graduated from law school, they found me the perfect little house that I could afford, with 12 old live oaks on the property, in a good neighborhood. It was just great. When Brandy and I were looking for a lot to one day build our dream home on, they helped us find a great lot in a really competitive neighborhood where there weren't that many places that were available. So this is a company that I endorse, not just because I love these people and know them well my whole life, but because they have worked miracles for me and done a great job, and also advised me and sometimes given me advice that cost them money, talked me out of purchases that they could have made a quick buck on. So they're trustworthy, they're smart, they know our local market inside and out, and that is why Branch Real Estate is Parker's pick for real estate needs in Ponchatoula and Hammond. Thank you so much. Because this show is new, any and all support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't already done so, number one, subscribe at the Apple Podcasts app or iTunes or Stitcher or Android, wherever you listen to podcasts. Number two, and this is important, write a 5-star rating and review the podcast. Number three, and this is the biggest, most important thing you could do, share it with your friends. We've got a Facebook page under the name The Ponchatoula Podcast. Check it out, like it, share it. You're going to see information about who we're interviewing, what's coming up. If you really want to get local news about Ponchatoula, Hammond, if you want to hear about local people here in Tangipahoa Parish, please support our podcast. We will be happy to share that information, but we need your help to make this thing a success. So thank you so much. I'm very excited to get going. I've lived here my whole life. I love this area, the people that live here, the things to do here, the food we cook here, etc. I could go on and on, but we'll do that later in subsequent episodes. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to share the Ponchatoula podcast with you.